Welcome to the Brain Over Binge podcast, where you learn a simple, brain-based approach to ending binge eating. I'm Kathryn Hansen, your host, and Coach Julie is here today as well to share a lesson that she recently taught inside the Brain Over Binge group. We wanted to bring this lesson to the podcast as well, because the topic, which is integrity in recovery, can help guide you in a way that brings more clarity and motivation. We'll talk about what integrity looks like in recovery, which, as we'll discuss, is definitely not perfection, but it's following through with what you want for yourself in the moments that matter most. Before we start, I want to make sure you know about my free 31-day Brain Over Binge inspiration booklet that can help support you as you quit binge eating. You can read just one simple page of the booklet each day to keep yourself focused on the fundamentals of recovery. You can download your copy through the link in the show description, which is brainoverbinge.com/inspiration-booklet. I also want to extend an invitation from Coach Julie to a free call that she is hosting on Friday, November 28th from 2 p.m. until 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You'll get to connect with her, learn practical recovery concepts, ask your questions, and see if coaching feels like a good fit for you. There's no commitment when you join this call. Just show up at that time using the Zoom link in the show description. Again, that's this Friday, November 28th from 2 p.m. until 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's all for the introduction, so let's get into today's topic. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Kathryn. So good to be here with you.
We're going to be talking about integrity in recovery today.
Yeah, it came to me, this lesson because, from a selfish perspective, integrity is probably my number one core value. And it's kind of this guiding principle that I'm always judging my own life by. But I realize that it's so critical in recovery, in all the areas that we talk about. There's this idea of integrity and wholeness and being in alignment. And so that's what I think we're going to explore today.
Yeah, and I think we could start by explaining what you mean by integrity, right? You use the word value, alignment. In my perspective, it's like behaving and acting in ways that correspond to who you want to be and how you want to show up in the world. So how would you describe integrity?
Yeah, I kind of say that it's this idea that your words, your actions, your intentions are all in alignment. So it's this idea of wholeness. And that's not perfection at all. So, I'm going to say that right away, and I'll probably repeat that throughout because I know that most of our audience are probably either perfectionists or recovering perfectionists because that's very connected to people who engage in binge eating. So I'm definitely not referring to perfection, but it's this idea of alignment where what you do and what you say and what you believe are all kind of matching.
And that's just a great principle to live by, right? And I know most of the listeners are trying to be in integrity every day, and they probably do feel integrity in a lot of areas of their life, but sometimes the binging and the eating can be a place where I know I felt out of my integrity. I was like, why am I doing things that clearly are not aligned with who I want to be? So you can feel like, okay, the rest of your life is kind of under control, and then you feel super out of your integrity as far as eating goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was always my biggest pain point, I want to say, because again, integrity is so important to me and binging is so out of my integrity. Like that behavior feels so out of my integrity that it bled actually into other areas of my life because I felt so demoralized by the fact that I wasn't following through on my promises to myself. It's this idea of like, I keep the promises I make to myself and others. Right. Like to me, that's the magic phrase mantra for a person living in integrity. And so, with binging, it was always a promise broken. And so regaining that integrity, it was probably the biggest benefit of living binge free.
Yeah, for sure. Like that's a great thing to point out that once you stop binging, you are going to feel so much more in your integrity every day. And I guess what we need to do is help people like that are trying to recover, that are trying to stop this, that want to bring more integrity into their eating and want to, feel aligned by not binging. So how do we bring integrity into recovery?
Yeah, great. So, let's just start top of the pile, right? Adequate eating. That is probably the biggest area where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck is really committing no matter what to eating adequately every day, because without that, the rest is futile.
Yeah.
You can't be in integrity if you're starving or you're binging. And you're not honoring your physical truth when you don't eat adequately. So it's this idea that you wake up and even though you might have urges to restrict or binge or purge, you say, no, I don't do that anymore, or fixate on your weight rate. And instead you say, I've committed to recovery. And that means I nourish myself consistently and adequately throughout the day.
Yeah, and I think this is a great time to bring up that reminder that integrity doesn't mean perfection. I think
Right.
the idea of having integrity can get possibly mixed up with the dieting mentality for people. Like, oh, if I have
Mm-hmm.
integrity, I will eat perfectly and I'll never eat something that's not clean and I'll never
Yep.
eat carbs or something like that. So it can be something that could get caught up with these dieting rules. So it's stepping
Yep.
back and realizing that that's not what we mean here. And you might need
Nope.
to look at your definition of what it means to be in your integrity. And I like how you were pointing out that integrity means nourishing your body.
Yep. And as you say so eloquently, enough decent food. Right? Throw some food on a plate and call it good enough for regular meals. Right? It's not about, am I exactly hungry? Am I exactly full? Is it this much? Is it 80%? It's none of that. It's enough decent food regularly and consistently throughout the day. With that, I want to say, because I see this time and time again, integrity means that you're not playing games with yourself or others about this. And I say that raising my hand very high as a person who did play games with it, right? I go to a Weight Watchers meeting one day and my eating disorder group the next day, right? I was the person who said like, oh, I'll eat sort of enough and I'll still be able to manage urges. And no, it doesn't work. So if you are playing those games with yourself, notice that, and not in a shameful way, just with curiosity, and say, is that working? Am I actually able to manage urges when I do that?
Yeah, and that's when it can help to look at that definition of integrity. And when you look at your definition, think about what you would tell someone else. And you would never
Mm-hmm.
tell someone you're only in your integrity if you eat the perfect meals at the perfect time every day. No, you would define it in a much more loose way. And of course, it's fine to have goals and to care about yourself and want to nourish yourself well in the way that works for you. And all that can be part of integrity. But just don't turn integrity into a restrictive diet.
Exactly. And so, if we're moving on, right, the second brain over binge tenant is, managing urges, right? Dismissing urges, or as I say, expecting and allowing urges, right? And so integrity is also about making that commitment to remember urges are going to arise probably every day for a while, and to be all in for naming them, noticing them, and not rewarding them, not acting on them, separating from them, remembering it's just a brain glitch, right? Remembering that you can be with that discomfort because you're nourishing yourself well, right? If we go back to the first idea. So staying in your integrity is, in this instance, is to me saying, I'm going to pause. I'm going to know that every day urges are going to come, and I'm going to pause and I'm going to remember what I really want for myself.
Yeah, staying in your integrity in recovery a lot of times means staying with that urge and not binging to get quote unquote relief from the urge. It means staying with that discomfort. And like you always say, it's a productive discomfort. That's what gets you toward change. So that's a really important thing to accept, because anyone out there listening, have you ever binged and then thought, oh, great, now I'm in my integrity? No one has ever felt in their integrity after a
Ever.
binge. So to stay in your integrity, you have to stay with the urge.
Right. And, a thought that I've had a lot recently is, a question you can ask yourself is this choice requiring some justification on my part? Because if it is, it's probably not in my integrity, and I probably don't really want this for myself. I will say, like, it's not, I'm not usually using that with food, but maybe it's something I'm going to spend money on, or, something I might want to do later. And, it's like, I like to use that filter. Like, if I'm having to justify this choice, it's probably not in my integrity. And so again, with the urges, and it could be urges to binge, to restrict, to purge. If you're needing to justify this choice in some way in your brain, you're probably not acting in your integrity, and you can use that as a filter.
I think that's such a good point about the justifications, because that's what the urges do. They try to come up with reasons that we should act on the urge, and whatever has worked in the past, it will come up again, and all of that to tempt you to binge, because that's what the lower brain thinks you need. But you have already decided, if you're here listening to this podcast, you know it's not worth it. You know it's not something you want to be doing. So trust in that decision. Trust that that is you. And when all these justifications come up, in order to stay in your integrity, just remind yourself, I've already made this decision.
Yeah. And so then, moving on from there, committing to eating adequately and to expecting and allowing urges, one of the things I always say is you have to take weight out of the equation, because if you keep using weight as your focus and your motivator and you're fixated on that, it's going to be very difficult to truly eat adequately. And then it's going to be truly difficult to manage urges, right? And so another way to stay in your integrity in this process of recovery is to committing to noticing all the non-weight benefits of recovery, right? So like this idea that like you make that commitment, okay, I'm going to eat adequately, I'm going to expect and allow urges. And instead of fixating on how much do I weigh and what size am I and when is this weight going to come off, instead I'm going to say, oh, I'm free from food obsession. I have a better mood. I have better energy. I'm sleeping better. I'm in my integrity. Look at that. How great is that? It's making that commitment as well.
Yeah, and I think diet culture can be super sneaky with people, and you can get this idea that, oh, I'm only in my integrity if I'm the perfect body. And as we've all seen, and as you and I have experienced, and so many people we've worked with, when we make that our main goal and when we fixate on that and try to fit our bodies into some mold that it's not even biologically possible for our unique body to be there, it really ruins your life in so many ways and brings you out of your integrity when it comes to the things that are actually important to you, when it comes to your relationships, when it comes to your career, when it comes to just whatever means something to you in your life. When you're constantly focused on weight, it takes you out of your integrity in so many other areas. So I think that's an important thing to point out.
Absolutely. And, how many clients have we worked with who talk about all their grief over time lost to all of this? And,
Yeah.
time is that one thing that you can't buy back. You can never get back time. And so this is the perfect time to make that commitment that enough. I have a PhD and fixating on my weight. I'm not going to do that anymore because it is the least interesting thing about me. And I don't binge today. The scale may not move, but I surely will wake up tomorrow with a better mood, better digestion, better sleep, pride, trust in myself. Everything else is going to get better. And those things are the stuff of life.
Absolutely. And when you don't fixate on your weight and try to control it, it can take care of itself. You can learn to trust your body. You can feel integrity with your own body. So many people that we've worked with just lack trust in themselves. They think it's their job to control their weight, and letting go is difficult, but there's so many rewards on the other side and greater health on the other side. Like I think we've all been fed sort of this myth that if you control it perfectly, you're going to have this great health, but like you're talking about, there's so many health benefits on the other side when you learn to trust your body. Like you said, better sleep, better mood, better digestion, better relationships. Life gets so much better when you let go of this struggle for control.
Absolutely. Not to mention the trauma of both restriction and binging on the body, right? Yeah. So letting go of that, you're setting yourself up to heal at a very deep level. So another area where I think integrity comes into play in recovery is around getting support, being honest with others, asking for help, sharing your struggles. There's so much isolation and hiding and shame tied to eating disorders. And, obviously I and you, we recommend the group and coaching for sure. But, if that's not your jam, if that's not available to you, okay, but make sure you reach out to someone. Make sure that there's a way in your life that you're reaching out for help.
I would also add that you can be a source of support for yourself as well, like to do some daily practices that help you. Sometimes integrity is about the small things you do every day to support yourself. And like you said, also asking for help when you need it.
Beautiful. I love that. So another area is this idea of bringing true pleasure into your life and honoring the fact that humans need pleasure. We need pleasure. We all do. We all deserve it. We need it. But binging is the opposite of pleasure. Food is delicious. Food is enjoyable. Food is one of the pleasures of life, but binging is never a pleasure. And so making sure that you do a scan of your days and like, are you saying yes to real pleasure, beauty, art, connection, music? It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It doesn't need to cost any money. I am not saying go to a spa and get a massage, although that sounds very nice, but that's not available to most of us. But whatever it is, take a walk outside, look at flowers, laugh with somebody, make sure that you have a little bit of that in your day every day.
That's such a great point because those type of pleasures don't take you out of your integrity. And the lower brain, the primitive brain, will tell you these lies about binging being pleasurable and binging being the only way you can take a break or the only thing you have that brings you some sort of joy in your life. And it's just simply not true. You've already, experimented with that. You know it always hurts you. So realizing that, yes, for now, your lower brain's going to say binging is the only thing that's going to bring you pleasure. But when you continue to explore these other forms of pleasure and you see that, gosh, I feel good in some ways, and you notice the ways you feel good, and you also notice that you're still in your integrity afterward, that's really, really powerful. And yeah, those pleasures won't have the same like dopamine hit right away because your brain is hooked on binging. But over time, as the dopamine regulates, as your habits change, you will find so much more true pleasure in things that don't bring you out of your integrity.
Totally. With consistency over time, what happens is what you want most begins to equal what you want in the moment. Right. And so that's the best feeling ever when you actually start to crave those true pleasures. True pleasures are things where there are no net negatives on the other side, unlike binging, which only has net negatives that compound over time.
Yeah.
True pleasure is nothing but net positive and compounds over time. And tied to that is also this very real need that we all have as humans for true rest. And, all too often what I hear is, binging is my only pleasure or binging is my only way to take a break. And, we talked about the power of the pause a long time ago about taking a real break. And the thing is like, being in integrity means honoring your body's need for rest. You cannot work 24/7 and not have some fallout from that. It is important to have stopping points and to give yourself true restoration.
Yeah. There again, this lower brain lie that you need to binge to justify a break. And it doesn't make any sense. If anyone else told you that, hey, I need to binge so that I can take a break, you'd be like, what? Why? You don't need to binge. Just go take a break. Just go lay on the couch. You don't have to do anything. You can be unproductive and still not binge. You can do nothing and still not binge. You don't need a binge to justify that rest.
Right. And it's not the rest you're seeking. Like a lot of times people say, well, I'm binging because I need a break. That's my break. And it's like, that is not a break. It is the opposite of a break. It only takes away your ability to rest peacefully, to feel well. It's an anti-break. And
Yeah.
so again, like really committing to every day, I'm going to give myself a little bit of true pleasure and I'm going to make sure that I get proper rest.
Something I want to point out is that integrity is going to be different for everyone. I see it as just kind of doing the best you can with your life circumstances, with, let's say, the food you have available, with what you can afford, with, everything we all have going on. It's like doing your best. I think even personally, I can get overwhelmed with the word integrity. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm not handling everything perfectly. And that's not what we mean. It's like doing your best every day to kind of stay authentic. I know that's a word you used on the lesson with the group, and I thought that was really a powerful way to describe it too. It's like showing up as yourself in the best way you can within the circumstances that you find yourself in.
Absolutely. Again and again and again, I'm glad we're reiterating it is never about perfection. And also, doing the best you can means you are in your integrity, right? Did I show up today? Did I try? Yes, good, good, and good. Full stop. Yeah, that's such a great point. Take any shame associated with this word and remove it. This is the idea of, figuring out what works for you, which is going to change during different seasons of life. So honoring that as well. To me, integrity is just a practice. Yeah. It's a practice like anything else. It's not pass fail. It's something that we do each day and we do the best we can. And then we look back on the day, what went well, what didn't go well, what can I do differently? And then we keep moving forward. And we're going to have learning moments every day, which is great because it means we're constantly growing and evolving.
And look for the ways you're already doing it, right? I know when you get stuck in the you get stuck in the binging habit, you can think, oh gosh, I'm doing terrible in all areas, but really try to challenge that because you're not. And I know there's areas that you are showing up with your values, with your true self, and just notice that. And you can build from there and carry some of those lessons from the places you're already succeeding into recovery.
Exactly, exactly. And that's a great idea for everybody listening. Think about like what's one time of day where you feel really dialed in? Notice that, notice where you've got some really solid habits in place where, you feel very aligned and build from there. Think about that, see that, celebrate that and build from there.
That's perfect. Do you have any final
No,
thoughts on
I think
integrity?
that's everything. I think we really covered it all. So, just excited to see how people respond to this because I think it's a very empowering idea to just say, each day I'm going to practice being in my integrity. I'm going to treat it as a practice with curiosity and kindness and not rigid perfectionism.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. This has been a very helpful conversation.
Thanks, Kathryn.
Thank you so much for listening today. If this conversation helped you and you want more lessons like this, as well as personalized coaching and the support of an amazing community, you can join the Brain Over Binge group at brainoverbinge.com/group. And that link is also in the show description. And as a quick reminder before I end today, Coach Julie's free call is on Friday, November 28th from 2 p.m. until 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This call is open to everyone. Just use the Zoom link in the show description at that time to connect with Julie. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next time. As always, I want to encourage you and remind you that you have the power to change your brain and live a binge-free life. The Brain Over Binge podcast is produced and recorded by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC. All work is copyrighted by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC, and all rights are reserved. As a disclaimer, the hosts of the Brain Over Binge podcast are not professional counselors or licensed healthcare providers, and this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice or any form of professional therapy. Eating disorders can have serious health consequences, and you are strongly advised to seek medical attention for matters relating to your health. Please get help when you need it, and good luck on your journey.